Hi, my name is Chris Donovan. I am a documentary photographer currently based in New Brunswick, and today I'm going to be taking you on a tour of my work in the exhibition of the New Generation Photography Award. So the work we see here is from an ongoing project called the Cloud Factory that I've been working on for close to a decade. And the title comes from when I was a child, growing up in St. John, New Brunswick, which is a heavily industrialized city. I was driving over the harbor bridge with my father, and I looked up at the smokestacks of the pulp mill, and I remember asking him if it made all of the world's clouds, and he told me no, they make money. And that was like it's an experience that a lot of kids have who grow up in not only in St. John, but in heavily industrialized areas where it feels like it's your whole world. And it's natural to think that, you know, this is where the clouds come from. If you haven't gone elsewhere and you're sort of wrapped up in it. And it made me think about how identity is formed in these industrialized places. So about 5 years ago, I started photographing a family, the Jackart Crandall family you see here. This is Lisa and Trey, who lived next to the refinery. And I photographed a few families, but these guys have been photographing for a while, since Trey was like really small. And they lived pretty well adjacent to the refinery, and they had a lot of adverse health issues. As a result, there was constantly soot on their houses. You could wipe the house and you'd see black soot on your hands fall out from the refinery. And Lisa's father died quite young from a rare lung condition. And several of her pets died of rare cancers, and pets all throughout the neighborhood were dying of cancer. And her dogs this is one of her dogs here, had a terrible skin condition where he would basically claw all of his fur off and bite at his fur. And so they live, like you can see here, this is walking one of their dogs next to the butane pipelines. And these pipelines leaked in 2018, and most of this neighborhood was evacuated and then purchased by the oil company and demolished. And Lisa's house was a little bit further away, about 100 yards further from the houses that were demolished, so it wasn't purchased. And then a year later, there was a large explosion that rocked their house. And so they were basically living in fear of disaster every day for years. Luckily, they've since been able to move, so that was a happy story. But there's a lot of people who are still in that situation where they're fearing for their lives every day, just trying to live normal lives. As a result of corporate greed and trying to make money despite, people's lives. That's in conflict with people trying to live their lives, I would say. So when working on putting together the images for this exhibition, it was difficult to narrow it down to 6, because the final product, if there is a final product, will be a book, which will have likely 60, 70 images that tell a narrative through those images and the way that they interact with one another. This is one example. These images are meant to be a diptych, and in the book they'll likely be on opposite pages. And this guy who's vaping at a skate park in St. John makes me think about the way that I sometimes feel in the city, where your head's in the clouds and you're surrounded by particulate matter from the factories. No matter where you are in St. John, you can see a smokestack from pretty much anywhere, whether it's the refinery or the pulp mill. And I wanted to try to represent that these particulate clouds aren't just clouds in the sense that they're particulate, they're actual physical things floating in the air that are surrounding us and that we're breathing in and that become part of us as they settle in our lungs. And I wanted to make people think about that in a more literal way.